Conference
The
will now be
relationship in the
recorded.
Gospel of John to these titles is directly relative to the tabernacle and the wilderness wanderings. That previous slide, which didn't show up very well, has the famous quote in John chapter 1, verse 14, where it says, "The word of God became flesh and tabernacled," or pitched his tent amongst us. And so this theme of the tabernacle is rich through John's gospel. And every time Jesus uses these titles, he draws back on lessons that the children of Israel learned from the wilderness wanderings and from the tabernacle. And there are seven titles in John's gospel that he uses, these I am titles, drawing on metaphors that, as I say, are taken from the story of the wilderness wanderings. And they follow a natural progression. You see, he starts, of course, in John chapter 6 with I am the bread of life, and it finishes with I am the true vine. So we see this symbol, don't we, of the beginning with bread and finishing with the vine. And if you think about the children of Israel, they began their wilderness wanderings, and it started with manna from heaven, and it finishes with them entering into the promised land, where they had that picture, of course, of Joshua and Caleb bringing that huge bunch of grapes, a land which was a symbol of this place of promise where everyone would sit under his own vine and under his fig tree. So they follow through this pattern. In the bread, for those who remember the exhort and for those who weren't, we took away two main lessons from the story of the bread. Jesus draws upon two main lessons from the wilderness wanderings with bread. The first one, of course, was the manna. He says, I am the bread that came down from heaven. I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate manna in the wilderness. So the people had this experience where they got provided for every day by God. And in this was actually teaching them a future story about Jesus. Because remember, and this is really important, the law is a shadow. Jesus is the real. So it's not actually that Jesus is a type of the manna, it's the manna is a type of Jesus. So everything that was taught in the law was deliberately pointing forward to the real. It was the shadow that pointed forward to the real that was in John's gospel. So when people got up every day and God provided them what was called angels' food, bread from heaven, specially provided for every day, that pointed forward to what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. He is our life every day. He is what we are sustained by every day. And one of the lessons that we learned from the manna was there was just enough for everybody. It didn't matter whether people gathered a lot or people gathered little. When it was divided up, there was enough. And there was a miracle that happened within a miracle. The miracle of the manna and the miracle of the perfect provision. And there's a lesson in that for us to think about Jesus. And it's a lesson the disciples had to learn. On one occasion, John saw someone casting out devils in Jesus' name, and that man didn't follow them. And so he prevented that man from following them. He stopped him. And when he told Jesus about this story, Jesus said, they that be for us are not against us. Don't forbid them. And there's something I think that's very powerful in this story about the provision of manna, is sometimes we need to see outside our own circles to see God's provision for other people. And I probably learned this most when we had a Bible education centre in Whangarei, and for 18 months I spent 2 or 3 days at a cafe during the week as a barista, talking to people that came in and out of the cafe. And a large percentage of those people were Christian people, and you got to know them. and you heard their stories. And for me, it was like, oh, God's put me here to teach them. After 18 months, I kind of realized that actually it might be the other way around. I got to meet a lot of people that had a lot of very similar beliefs to me, and I actually saw how God was working in their lives. And it struck me that it's like, we can get a little bit isolated and not see that God's provision is far greater than perhaps we realize in terms of the way he works in other people's lives. So that was a humbling experience, and it helped me. The second major thing that came out of the manna in the wilderness was the story of the feeding of the 5,000. So after the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus told the disciples to go and gather up all the fragments. Go and get the crumbs. Don't miss any of the crumbs. And they gathered up all the fragments. So here's everybody eating, and they get the leftovers. And they get the crumbs and the bits that are left over, and they gathered up, and they had 12 baskets full. Why does it tell you that story? And that story comes out in the story in the wilderness, not of the manna, but of the table of showbread. Because the story of the table of showbread was all about presenting their brothers. The Levites would present these loaves before God every week. And they would change out these loaves and freshly baked bread every week. And the symbol was they were to present their brothers to God. And Jesus was teaching the disciples, of those whom the Lord gave me, I have lost none. He was determined to present all the disciples before his Father. And there's a massive lesson in that for us, isn't there? To see that it's our job to make sure we are helping to present one another before God, and to see the work of Jesus in each other's lives. So that was the story of the manna. And what's interesting in that, this theme flows through all the 7 sayings, is that you get this idea of how the people saw the lesson, I am the bread of life, and how the priesthood saw the lesson. So the people saw manna as they wandered out and gathered up manna every day. The priesthood saw the principle inside the temple with the showbread. So the symbol was there at a natural level and at a spiritual level. So now when we come to the story of I am the light of the world, this story comes out of John chapter 8 and 9. And this is the next title of Jesus in the I am titles. So John chapter 8, Jesus spoke to them again, saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me shall never walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Now, to speak on the light of the world is probably about a 500 series talk, because the subject of the light of the world is everywhere in the Bible. God is light, and you can start from the beginning, and almost every second or third chapter you're going to get this principle of light versus darkness. But we want to just look at how this is used in John's Gospel and how this relates particularly to the lessons in the wilderness. So this one, of course, of following the light, I am the light of the world, anyone who follows me shall never walk in darkness, of course, brought them back to this picture that the people saw a miracle every day. Like just amazing. And I imagine the first time they saw that miracle, the first time they saw, a cloud by day, and then fire just coming down from heaven by night, they would have gone, whoa, this is amazing. After the first week, they were probably still going, wow, this is amazing. After the first month, they'd probably go, oh, this is interesting. After the first year, somebody might have said, you see that? It's like, well, the fire. Oh, yeah, it's there every day. Do you know, we take for granted sometimes the most amazing thing that God does because we become too familiar with it. This was an amazing miracle. And when that fire moved, time to go. Time to pick up your stuff and to follow the fire. Follow this pillar. And it was God's light, to provide them guidance as they wandered through a desert. It can get pretty dark in a desert. The amazing thing about light and darkness, no matter how much dark you have, you can't expel light. In fact, of course, definition of darkness is absence of light. Darkness is actually nothing. Darkness actually doesn't exist as a real thing, simply as absence of light. And man on his own is dark. The heart of man is evil. On his own, without light, without law, he is simply darkness. And do you know what? The more dark it is, the brighter the light shines. The light shines better the darker it is, isn't it? You go outside and when there's no light pollution, you can see the stars better and better. There's no amount of darkness that can dispel light. In fact, the more darkness, the more powerful the light is seen. And this light became their guiding light as they wandered through the wilderness. Jesus said to them that he was the true light which lights every man that comes into the world. So let's go to John chapter 8 and just see this story here that Jesus brings out about being the light of the world. So it comes from verse 12. But I think to understand the fullness behind this title, we need to look at the context. So verse 12, Jesus spoke to them, I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of light. This story comes at the end of one of the most incredible festivals, 6 months before Jesus' death, the Feast of Tabernacles, an amazing ceremony which was held for 7 days, and within the temple courts and Herod's temple, they had these huge candelabras, which 4 big huge candelabras which lit up the whole court of the temple, and they were lit on special occasions during the Feast of Dedication, but also during the Feast of Tabernacles. For 7 days that light was there, and on the 8th day was the end when it was going to they would be put out. These events happen on the 8th day. This is the day called Shemini Atzeres. It's the last day, the holy day, the most special day of the
Where
feast.
are we up to?
And this is the day that Jesus says, I am the light of the world. And he says it after a horrific incident. One of the most confronting, most horrific stories that is actually in the whole of the New Testament. The story of this terrible scene,
Oh, it's
of this
freezing.
trap
I said it's
that
freezing. The
these
door's open.
evil men had set for Jesus. And they had set this trap and used this woman as a political pawn to publicly shame and humiliate her in front of everybody for the sole purpose of bringing Jesus down. It's a terrible, sad story. Probably one of the darkest things that Jesus experienced, where they had caught this woman and brought her and publicly shamed her in the court of the women before Jesus. And of course, we know the story. Jesus looks down, writes something in the ground. A lot of speculation on that. I think the interesting thing about Jesus looking down, it's also he didn't add to her humiliation and her shame. He turned his eyes away and he looked to the ground. I'm not going to talk about what he wrote, but I think that is actually what happened. This is what you would know as an honor killing. in the Islamic world, where this woman brings dishonor upon the community, and so she is being brought to be publicly stoned to retain the honor of the community. Because she has brought dishonor upon the community, you need to defend the honor of the community. And Jesus, in this incredible story, of course, somehow brings about this situation where not only all her accusers walked away in shame, but it appears that all the crowd moved away. I think all the crowd were convicted and turned away. And she was left there with Jesus on her own, which is remarkable because it's in the middle of the temple. It's in the middle of the court of the women. But it seems all the people themselves had looked at this situation and thought, and just moved away. And he defended her. And it's this incredible story of Jesus defending this woman. And then he goes into this story of I am the light of the world. And I think in this story is a different light. This is a light which was another light, which was inside the tabernacle. Because Jesus, of course, was the light of the world, which gave light and life. Does no man condemn thee? Yea, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. The truth shall set you free. And she was guilty. No question whatsoever. She was caught in the very act. But in this incredible story of compassion and forgiveness, Jesus rises above legal written law and has this beautiful picture of compassion and sets her free from her own condemnation. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. And this is the picture of the lampstand. It's the most beautiful picture of what this light represented. Shining inside the tabernacle was this picture of the lampstand. And I'm going to suggest to you that with the lampstand is the key to what Jesus goes on to say next. Oh, sorry. Pointer wasn't working. So in the next section, just this short little section, this is taken from eSword. This is the King James version with all the Strong's numbers on eSword. And you'll see in here, doesn't show up so well, but this word here for truth appears 7 times in the next section, which I think is remarkable when you think about the story of the menorah. 7 times Jesus uses this idea of the truth shall set you free. And I have spoken the truth, but you would not listen to me. See, we use the truth often as this idea we have the truth in the sense of a doctrinal sense. And there are occasions in the New Testament where it is used in that sort of way. But the vast majority of the phrase the truth in the New Testament picks up this word aletheia, which has this word idea of the candor of mind, which is free from pretense, simulation, falsehood, deceit, darkness, in other words. That is the darkness, the deceitfulness and the darkness which exists in not being true. And Jesus talks about being true, and it comes on the back of this story. And I think this is a very powerful lesson with what the lampstand represents. It's out of pure beaten olive oil, that pure oil that everybody brings to light a light. It's about sincerity, honesty, integrity. No deception, nothing being hidden. That's what the picture of Jesus was. He was perfectly the light of the world. There was no deception or evil, no double-mindedness in him. And he gives this picture in John chapter 8. And it follows through right through to John chapter 9, because again in John chapter 9 is the same story of I am the light of the world in relationship to the healing of the blind man. So after he heals this man that's born blind, verse 5, he says, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So this is, by the way, the next day. It's the day following. On the 8th day, by the way, the Jews turned around to Jesus and said, your testimony is of yourself, so your testimony cannot be true. How can you prove your testimony, your witness? And the next day, he heals somebody that's been born blind, and then says, or the blind man says, has it ever been seen before? Search the scriptures. Has anyone who has been born blind ever been healed? You want evidence? You want proof of his testimony? Well, the next day he does something that's never been done, an unprecedented miracle in healing somebody that's born blind. And he, as it were, creates new eyes, because he gets clay, spits on them, puts them on his eyes, and it's like he makes a new pair of eyes for this man that's never had eyes. And he's only ever known total darkness, absolute darkness. And then he sees light. And in the story of this blind man, of course, is the same lesson of darkness versus light, in the sense of this deceptive, evil, corrupt religious system that existed. If I be lifted up, Jesus said, the prince of this world will be cast out. And the prince of this world existed in the darkness of the scribes and Pharisees. And they challenged this blind man on the day he was healed. And in the end, they cast him out of the temple. And that record in John chapter 9 finishes with Jesus' last confrontation with the Pharisees. And they said, are we blind also? That's a great question, isn't it? That's what this lesson was really about. That was the difference between pure light and pure darkness. I am the light of the world. So in the children of Israel witnessed, those who were not part of the priesthood, they witnessed the light by the pillar of fire. Those who were spiritual in the priesthood, they witnessed the light by the beautiful menorah candlestick, which was inside the holy place in the temple. But there was one other form of light, wasn't there? It didn't occur all the time. But there was another form of light that came right over the most holy place. It was a divine light called the Shekinah glory. And that Shekinah glory never appeared, it wasn't there constant. It often appeared around the time of the Day of Atonement, right at this time, right at this time right now, where the divine light was seen. And this divine light is what's spoken of in Isaiah chapter 60 that we read in our introduction at the end of the chapter. Thank you, Jeremy, for making that beautiful connection, by the way, at the beginning of the chapter, which is the radiant light of Jesus appearing to the end of the chapter of the future glory. Isaiah chapter 60 is a different light, a light wherein there is no need of sun. Verse 19, the sun will not be your light anymore. The moon will not be your light anymore, because the Lord God will be your light, And the sun will not go down, and it will continue day and night, and your gates will be open all the time. What an incredible picture of the Shekinah glory. And Israel saw that from time to time. And that's what we're here to remember. Because there is one place where darkness is the darkest of dark. One place where it is so dark, because in that place there is no thought, there is no memory. And we come to remember bread and wine. And we come to remember the conquering of the light of the world. The one place where darkness was completely overcome. And we follow the light because in him is life.